In this video, I'm going to show you why you should study the character of Spider-Man to improve your second act climax and overall just make you a better storyteller. I love talking about storytelling. Even since I was a 5-year-old kid going to see Spider-Man 2 for the first time, I fell in love with the hero's journey. Here I am almost 13 years later and I'm feeling the exact same way but about Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I could make an entire series dissecting every single step of the hero's journey, and if you want that, comment down below because I'm just asking for an excuse to do it. But today I just want to talk about my favorite step and arguably what I think is the most important step. It is the death and rebirth of your hero. I want to study it with Spider-Man No Way Home today and a couple of its multiversal counterparts in order to show you guys a more modern interpretation of how these movies perfectly tackle this step of the hero's journey. Spoilers for No Way Home past this point. If you haven't seen it, honestly, you've been warned. It's basic science that every positive reaction inherits a negative reaction. It's Newton's third law. The same is true with story. For every action in your story, there needs to be a positive and negative tug of war, or else your actions are going to feel weightless and anticlimactic. Death and rebirth is the step of the hero's journey in which this is the most relevant. For those unaware, death and rebirth is the middle of the hero's journey in which your character is at their lowest and the most change happens. This will be the moment in the story in which your hero has virtually lost everything. Maybe it's his rock in a crazy multiversal battle. Or maybe his greatest villain attacked his elderly aunt in the safety of her own home. Or maybe the city is under attack and you've been shot and now there's no way you're gonna make it to the final battle on time. Whatever it is, your character is going to be tested like they never have before. Therefore, this is the moment in your story where your hero is gonna have to make a choice. Are they going to sit down and accept the loss that they've suffered? Or are they going to get back up and prove to the audience that they are the hero that the movie's been telling us that they can be? In most cases, your hero will be doing the latter. Now hold your horses, kiddos. Don't stop, don't write anything. Don't write anything yet. We're not done. It's not as easy as that. There's a lot to unpack here that is important in developing the death portion of the death and rebirth part in order to make it a successful and honestly satisfying moment for your hero. So sit down, grab some popcorn, take a breath, breathe in, breathe out, because we got a little bit more to go. The death and rebirth step, most of the time, is a very long process. The best way to develop this death step is to completely break your character so that they can be rebuilt once more in a satisfying fashion. And the only way that we can make it satisfying is if we truly break them. So I'm gonna show you how you can truly break your character. I have 3 steps for 3 Spider-Men on how to break your character effectively. In Spider-Man No Way Home, Peter Parker's identity is revealed and his personal life is on display for the entire world to see, which in turn develops Peter's biggest fear of ruining the lives of those around him because of his own secret.
But this isn't about me. This is hurting a lot of people.
So when we reach the death and rebirth segment of Peter Parker's story in Spider-Man No Way Home, essentially what we're gonna do is take that biggest fear that he has and amplify it, make it his worst nightmare. Not only has his biggest fear come to life, he didn't just ruin the life of somebody close to him. He got them killed. For our next example, we're gonna jump over to another universe. Things are getting a little depressing over here. Over here in the Amazing Spider-Man universe, the conflict revolves around 2 major issues. 1, Peter Parker inadvertently helped Dr. Connors turn himself into a giant mutant lizard. And 2, he is dating the captain of the police's daughter, who effectively hates him and has the entire police force going after him. Now, the way this film handles the death and rebirth is taking those 2 conflicts and amplifying them to an enormous scale. So, starting with the first conflict, it's stated in this film that Peter feels an enormous amount of guilt for helping Dr. Connors turn into this thing that has essentially corrupted him from the inside out. Peter literally spent maybe 10 minutes of the film helping Dr. Connors develop the formula that turns him into the lizard. It takes that guilt that Peter feels, the formula he created, and now spreads it on a mass scale. So not only does he feel guilt for one person, he feels guilt for the entirety of New York. And if that weren't bad enough, the NYPD, the father of his girlfriend, stops him while he's on his way to the final battle, and what happens? his mask gets taken off and he is shot. This piques Peter's conflict with the NYPD. It can't really get much worse than that. Over in our third universe, Peter Parker, still reeling with the trauma from losing his Uncle Ben, turns to Spider-Man to protect the ones he loves, but also struggles with the duality of being Spider-Man and keeping it a secret. So when the aforementioned Death and Rebirth segment hits this Peter Parker, they spend a lot of the film kind of setting up the hopes and dreams of Peter Parker. He wants to have the perfect life where he gets to keep his secret and protect the ones that he loves. So this film essentially rips that from under him. First off, Goblin attacks Aunt May in the safety of her own home, all while revealing to Peter that this only happened because the Goblin found out who he was. Nobody from his family or friends is safe, and now his worst enemy knows exactly who he is. At this moment in time, all of these heroes are left with a choice to make. The easy choice or the hard choice. One will end their journey and maybe some of them will get the lives that they wanted back, while the other one forces them to stand up and do the right thing. So that's the question you need to pose for your character. Will they send the multiversal enemies home to die? Will they hang up the tights at the demand of a lunatic? Will they give up while they're shot and down, wallowing in the guilt of the monster they created? The answer is no. Your hero, your protagonist, is going to stand up in this moment and let us know whether or not all of the character development throughout the film has actually changed them. Because the character that all these Peter Parkers were at the beginning of their films probably would have buckled under the pressure and maybe even failed. By the end of their films, all of them have grown and changed through the death and rebirth. All of this is exactly why I think this step might just be the most important in the hero's journey. Obviously, all of the other steps are incredibly important and should never be brushed off, but I think when developing your characters and your plot, well, at least personally for me, when I'm building a story or a character, I'm thinking of two questions. Who is this character? And what is my story trying to say? Both of those questions are answered in the rebirth aspect of the death and rebirth segment. And I can't have rebirth without the death part. So I build both of them up and kind of work out from there the rest of my story. But like I said though, this is just my personal way of going about it. You might have your own way and that's completely fine. But I want to take this video to remind everybody how important this step of the hero's journey is. So for all of you young and aspiring writers out there, I hope that this served as an example as to why and how you should put all of your energy into making sure your death and rebirth works. And I hope our multiversal helpers kind of helped you in a sense of showing the different examples of how you could pull this off in your story. You could take from any one of them or all of them and immediately you have a formula to follow that will help you craft a really interesting death and rebirth segment. But that's about it for this video on the death and rebirth part of the hero's journey. If you want me to cover the other aspects and other steps of the hero's journey, let me know and I'll make a full series out of it if you comment enough below. If you want to learn what I learn on my steps to becoming a full-time writer, make sure you hit the bell below. As always, everybody, stay safe, and until next time, keep writing.